Imagine a quiet September day in 1847 in Kearney, Missouri. Here, a baby named Jesse Woodson James is born to a Baptist minister and a farmer. Little did anyone know this boy would become one of America's most infamous outlaws. Jesse James's journey into crime began amidst the chaos of the Civil War. As a teenager, he and his brother Frank joined pro-Confederate guerrilla units in Missouri, notorious for their brutal tactics. The brothers quickly made a name for themselves, particularly during the infamous Centralia Massacre. With the war's end in 1865, the James brothers, along with the younger brothers, formed the James Younger Gang. Their daring bank, stagecoach, and train robberies in the Midwest left police confused and scared people in the places they targeted. The robbery of the First National Bank of Northfield, Minnesota in 1876 was one of their most famous and failed schemes. It ended in a bloody shootout in which several gang members were caught and killed. Jesse James cultivated a Robin Hood persona, claiming to steal from the rich to give to the poor, though this narrative was largely a myth. As law enforcement intensified efforts to capture the gang, the Pinkerton National Detective Agency was brought in, leading to a deadly game of cat and mouse. Jesse's life of running, hiding, and fighting took its toll, and he briefly attempted to retire. But retirement was short-lived. Financial pressures and a restless spirit drew Jesse back into crime under the alias Thomas Howard. On April 3, 1882, in St. Joseph, Missouri, Jesse James was betrayed and killed by Robert Ford, a member of his own gang who hoped to collect a reward. But if you thought Jesse James's end was shocking, just wait until you hear about the daring escapades of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in the wild, untamed West. We moved to the dusty, rugged terrain of the American Wild West in the late 1800s. Two notorious outlaws roamed, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, known in real life as Robert Leroy Parker and Harry Alonzo Longabaugh. The brave things they did and the fact that they eventually fled to South America made them famous figures in the Wild West. Butch Cassidy, born Robert Leroy Parker, got his name after working in a butcher shop. He changed his name to the Sundance Kid after spending time in jail in Sundance, Wyoming. They were in charge of the notorious Wild Bunch gang, which robbed banks, trains, and stagecoaches. In 1899, the Wild Bunch pulled off a remarkable heist, robbing a Union Pacific Railroad train in Wyoming. Their repeated evasion of capture painted them as almost heroic figures, but relentless pursuit by law enforcement, especially the Pinkerton Detective Agency, meant their days were numbered. In 1901, Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid, and Sundance's girlfriend Etta Place fled to South America. They lived a more peaceful life in Argentina and Bolivia for a time, but eventually returned to crime. In 1908, they were cornered by the Bolivian army in San Vicente, leading to a shootout that likely ended their lives, though some believe they escaped. But if you thought their story was wild, wait until you hear about the notorious John Wesley Hardin. In the late 1800s, horses trotted by wooden shops in a dusty Texas town. The air was full of excitement. John Wesley Hardin, who was born on May 26, 1853 in Bonham, Texas, walked these streets. His name would become famous for all the wrong reasons. John's early years showed signs of greatness. His Methodist preacher father taught him a lot and taught him morals. Still, an angry attitude was dormant and ready to explode. John killed an ex-slave for the first time when he was 15 years old in 1868. This was the start of his legendary life as a criminal. He said he killed 42 men, which made him known as a dangerous gunfighter. Harden's life as an outlaw was full of constant running away and crimes like gambling and stealing cattle. He started a huge search for him when he killed Deputy Sheriff Charles Webb in 1874. Captured by Texas Rangers in 1878, Harden was sentenced to 25 years for Webb's murder. In prison, he studied law and, after 17 years, passed the bar exam, hoping to start anew as a lawyer. Harden's private life was a mess. In 1872, he married Jane Bowen, and the two of them had a number of children. His life went into chaos after Jane died, and his marriage afterward was full of problems. Even though people tried to change Harden, trouble followed him. He got involved with the law, including a plan to kill people for money. The last part of his life lived on the edge ended violently on August 19, 1895, when police officer John Selman Sr. shot him during a fight in the Acme Saloon in El Paso, Texas. But that was not all. This is John Henry Doc Holliday, got his degree in dentistry from the Pennsylvania College of Dental Surgery in 1872. He felt proud and excited to start his own practice. His tools were ready, and his future seemed bright. But soon, he got terrible news. He had tuberculosis, a deadly disease at the time. He needed to leave the humid South and move to the dry climates of the West to live longer. Think about changing from a quiet dental office to the noisy, rough saloons of the frontier towns. That was Doc Holliday's new life. His illness made it impossible to keep working as a dentist, so he turned to gambling. With cards in his hands instead of dental tools, he became known as a skilled gambler. The West was not just about card games. It was a place where fights were often settled with guns. Holliday, quick and sharp, became known not just for his gambling, but also as a good gunfighter. Stories about his shooting skills spread, and people respected and feared him. One important person in Holliday's life was Wyatt Earp. They were like a powerful team, facing the dangers of the West together. Their friendship was tested during the famous gunfight at the OK Corral. On October 26, 1881 in Tombstone, Arizona, Holliday stood with the Earp brothers in a fierce shootout. This fight became one of the most famous events in the history of the American West. Doc Holliday's life was also a story of decline. His frequent run-ins with the law, his lifestyle, and his worsening tuberculosis took a heavy toll. Imagine a man once full of energy slowly losing his battle with a relentless disease. His health got worse, making his bold actions fewer and making every day a struggle. Doc Holliday's story ended in Glenwood Springs, Colorado on November 8, 1887. He was only 36 years old, a once strong gunfighter, now weak and frail, finally lost to the illness that had followed him for years. But even after his death, his legend continued to grow. But Doc Holliday's saga of survival and sharpshooting isn't the only legend of the West. Imagine the Wild West with dusty trails and wide open spaces. In this land without laws, one man stands out, not for being violent, but for his strange charm and wit. His name, Black Bart. Charles Earl Bowles, also known as Charles E. Bowles, lived a double life. During the day, he was just a regular man, but at night, he became Black Bart, a polite stagecoach robber. Unlike other robbers who used guns and violence, Black Bart never fired a gun. He scared people with his clever tricks and calm presence. When you think of a stagecoach robbery, you might imagine loud, threatening robbers and scared passengers. But Black Bart was different. He left poems at the scene of his crimes. One of his poems said, "I've labored long and hard for bread, for honor, and for riches. But on my corns too long you've tread, you fine-haired sons of bitches." These poems mocked the law and made him more mysterious. He wore a linen coat and a mask with holes for his eyes. His mix of politeness and boldness made him unforgettable. Even careful plans can go wrong. In 1883, after a robbery, Black Bart left behind a handkerchief. This clue helped Wells Fargo detective James B. Hume find him. His capture was a big event. He was sentenced to 6 years in San Quentin State Prison but behaved well and was released early in 1888. After leaving prison, Black Bart vanished. Some said he went to New York, others believed he returned to crime. No one knew for sure, adding to his legend. Black Bart's story mixes fact and legend. He was not just a thief, he was a performer, a poet, and he would subscribe to the channel. His story remains a part of American history, showing that even in wild times, some outlaws used their wits as much as their guns.